Just before we start, big content warnings on this one, because we're discussing the Platner news story, which involves talking about sexual assault. Yeah, I just make notes because, years into this, I still regularly panic that I'll run out of things to say.
Yeah, I don't think you and I are going to run out of things to say about this.
And as you might have expected, it's a news roundup episode. And they age like wine.
One topic of conversation, news roundup with one thing we want to talk about. And guess what that is?
Yeah.
You audience have seen the title.
You've seen the title. You already know. You're very intelligent people.
Yes.
How do I know? Because you're listening to us. That's podcasting tip there.
Yeah.
Flatter the audience.
You, the heroes.
So, we were right about everything. I think that's so. It's just so everybody's sort of doing this. I'm not doing a "I told you so." I'm not doing "you see, I was right all the time" thing, and then they proceed to just do that. So I'm just going to be open about the fact that I'm feeling very smug.
I am frankly. So we are talking about the Graham Platner implosion, or as my phone wants to go, the Graham Platner implosion. Every time I try to type Platner, it's just Planter.
When he tried to parlay,
I'm not adding that word to my phone at this point. Certainly not at this point.
He tried to parlay the peanut fortune into a political career, and this, it was always going to go badly. He tried to run from the left, ostensibly from the left, but of course, his mascot is this sort of top hat, monocle wearing little guy, and it betrays who his real friends are.
I thought you were going for a Jimmy Carter reference for a moment there, so I apologize. I was like,
oh,
and then
yeah,
his brother brews beer. Sorry, you are completely correct. Okay.
I want to say, jokes aside, this is not actually a riotous laugh a minute story.
No,
there's some horrible stuff in here. This guy is really, aside from having presumably killed loads of people when he was in the war on terror voluntarily, he's hurt a lot of people in his private life, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I re-listened to our episode that we did about Graham Platner back when he first kind of came out as a guy with a Nazi tattoo. Maybe you shouldn't run for Senate, your first thing that you do in public life. Maybe yes. Do other things first. That was my whole argument, is like, prove yourself. Look, people.
You were actually pretty moderate on this, if I remember.
I don't know. Like, I re-listened to it and I was more negative than I remembered being. I remember myself being pretty moderate. So I re-listened to that episode. I don't know. Did you re-listen to that before kind of coming back to this? Or
I wanted to, but I hate re-listening to myself for reasons that should be obvious. It's bad enough having to listen to me once, let alone twice.
And then you do the editing, so you've listened to it like 5 times. It's like, I get it.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, we were both like very talking about like, the Nazi tattoo is bad, but like, he has Totenkopf. He's he got it while he was drunk in Croatia. I mean, there's all this sort of like, he's probably lying about. I mean, I don't know. Like, I was very much on the like, this is the new Fetterman train. Is like, he's gonna get elected, and he's not a Nazi, but he's gonna just be terrible. If you have this past, which his whole thing is, I have this past. I served in the military. The things I saw in the military showed me that U.S. military adventurism abroad is bad, by which every indication means like we shouldn't be sending our white servicemen over there to be murdered, and not like, But over the few months, I'm not going to say like all those misgivings I had were still there, but like he was consistently on message. He spoke in very not uncertain terms about the genocide in Gaza, about like, all these issues, and spoke in depth, like in ways that like Fetterman never really did. Platner, either he's very well coached or he actually believes this shit. And I was kind of like, I was very much on the look, this is an electoral thing. We don't do electoral politics here. This is something that we might get into about like what electoral politics requires in this thing. But like, he speaks the right words. And if the voters of Maine are supporting him, ultimately it's their decision. And I don't live in Maine. I don't have to decide whether I want to vote for Graham Platner or Susan Collins or not vote or whatever. That's not my choice to make. But if the voters are choosing him and he's got a good message and crucially might help the Democrats flip the Senate into Democratic control and help to
Hmm.
control the autocracy, the Trump autocracy that's happening right now.
Yes, which is,
That's a yeah,
that's better than Trump getting to appoint two more Supreme Court judges.
exactly. And so it was a very like kind of calculated thing. It's like, look, this guy is not I believe or don't believe certain things about him, but like having any Democrat in that seat is better than having any Republican. And if it's a Democrat who's actually, speaking the right words about Gaza and speak about Medicare for all and all these kinds of things, all the more power to him. I was just kind of on the thing of like, maybe you shouldn't like, Nazi tattoo, Blackwater employee, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next thing we know about you is you're a U.S. Senator. Maybe do something in between. And that was the whole logic that I had. And boy, did that take age very, very well. Like, that's the thing. If this man had been vetted at all, you and I would never know his name. That's just the
No.
reality of it.
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes.
Um,
Apparently he was just sort of recruited by this guy Morris Katz,
sure.
who's who started out working for, I think, the Bernie campaign. And he was involved in recruiting Fetterman, and he was involved in Mamdani's campaign. And I don't know, it just sounds like a complete clusterfuck. These people, the Katz and the people around him, they came in from outside, and they just decided they took one look at Platinum, and they just decided, oh, this guy has to be the senator.
Yeah, I think there
And
was some like public advocacy that he had done, and he had spoken well at some public meetings at some point, and they approached him to run, and yeah, and so I don't have the details of this in my head, but
no, I
like
don't have the details either.
it is like, well, how do these people like come about? Like, how do you no Democratic operative has ever like approached me and be like, "You've got a really cool podcast. Run for House." Like for some reason that never happens. I can't imagine. I can't
Can't think
imagine.
why.
Why maybe Graham Platner might be approached by people who do this and not myself. It's certainly not a thing. Also, I will never ever run for elected office in the United States. The idea of having like fascist Republicans like dig into my personal life. I'm a voice on a podcast. That's the height of where I want to be in this world. I'm fine with that. It's great. Sorry, I think we're dancing
Yes.
around the point, and
We
we're kind of setting the
yes.
stage here a little bit. But yeah, Graham Platner suspended his campaign this morning. We're recording at nearly 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time on July 8th, by the way, or July 9th, excuse me. I misread my clock. But yeah,
And his suspension, he still hasn't dropped out. And he seems to be,
suspension is kind of a drop out. Anyway, continue. Go
yeah, I
ahead.
mean,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
has dropped out, but he hasn't, he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't pulled the trigger, so to speak.
I think
Which,
from understanding he wants to have some kind of influence on who replaces him. You know,
yes,
you know.
which, fuck off, Graham, just fuck
Yes.
off.
I mean, I would
Um,
rather it be a more progressive candidate, than not. But ultimately, at this point, I mean, look, if Susan Collins wins this race in November, and the Democrats do not flip the House or do not flip the Senate, which seems more likely than it was a week ago.
mhm.
The single person that I will blame for this is Graham Platter. That is the single person most responsible for that at this point, because he
Yes,
knows exactly what was in his past. He knows exactly what was going on. He's been lying about a whole lot of his personal details. He just kind of like, sorry, I'm going to rant here for a second. I apologize.
he's been lying his head off.
well, I didn't know about the Nazi tattoo. I found out about it later. And then it's like, no, no, no. People will say, like, oh, I called it my Totenkopf. Like you knew what it was. And
Yeah,
that was kind of
yeah.
fairly clear at
And
the time.
look,
But
I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. Even we now have, yes, you're right. We now have witnesses from his past who tell us, yes, he knew what it was. There's one person who says, "Oh, he taught me the German word." Okay, that's it's good to have confirmation of something that we all. You're telling me this guy's never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I am willing to sort of like split the difference on that. It's like, yeah, I got drunk in Croatia. I got a shitty tattoo. Some of these guys are just meatheads. They just don't like process it in that way.
Don't you
I'm willing to
think
go
that
that
we
far. I'm willing to go that
don't you
far,
think
you
that
know.
we've given this guy too much of the benefit of the doubt already, though? Really? Like, how do
No,
we know that
this
this
is
guy wasn't an actual Nazi at one point? Like,
I mean,
he certainly seems to like war and killing people enough to be a Nazi.
we were talking in the preamble about maybe I'm a little bit too embracing the nuance, and I think this is true. But I think it's like I'm perfectly willing to say like I don't want to like go hard on this and being like he was a Nazi the whole time. He's secretly an anti-Semite. He's like that. I don't
I
see
don't
from
claim to
what I
know
see.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't know that that's true. He was clearly lying about the provenance of the Nazi tattoo. And then like, well, I never worked for Blackwater. No, you worked for the company that became Blackwater. And well, they
you
checked my
volunteered to go
they
and work for Constellis,
yeah.
which is what they called themselves after they had to change their names because they were responsible for one of the most notorious massacres of
Yeah,
the War on
I
Terror.
literally worked for Abu Ghraib. Like,
Yeah,
I literally worked at Abu Ghraib. Yeah, that should be disqualifying. Like that by
by
itself
itself,
should be
yes.
disqualifying. Well, the military checked my tattoos when I re-enlisted. They said everything was fine. Well, no, no, no. Entered another branch of the military that didn't check
That
some.
just means the military
Like
don't mind employing Nazis.
it's exactly. It's like, well, they check it. It's not on one of their hate symbols, but no, you didn't re-enlist this way. I forget the details on this, but you re-enlisted in a way that's like, they let it slide. All that shit was
I love the
lies,
idea of Blackwater, screening candidates, and they say, "Well, we can't let this guy in. He's got a Nazi tattoo."
exactly. Um, yeah, I mean,
What else is on your banned list? Punisher tattoos, and no, we can't have people like that in Blackwater. Heaven forfend.
I think Blackwater is actually like no, the Punisher tattoo is a requirement. You have to have a Punisher
Yes,
tattoo.
it's mandatory.
Yes. No, our brand is mandatory Punisher, zero Tutankhamons. That's the we have to be fascist, but not outright Nazis. That's how we land. That's the plan. And the thing about like an oyster farmer, I'm just a humble oyster farmer. You own an oyster farm. You sell the vast majority of your products to your mom's restaurant. You
Hmm.
know, you went to
Your
private.
grandfather was a
You
prize-winning architect or some shit. You went to a private school. Knock it off with this, horny-handed
well,
son of the working class stuff.
and you're in your way of rebelling from this. Your way of like, no, I'm actually, yeah, I went and lived in the world. Is I joined the U.S. military and killed brown people in the war on terror. Like
Yeah.
that was your answer. And
I
I was in
protested the invasion of Iraq and then I volunteered to go and take part in it.
because I can
Great.
change it from the inside. Maybe God, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it's so, and I can, and this is the thing I think quietly from a side was willing to say there's an explanation for all of this. He's saying all the right things. Again, I don't have to vote for the guy. If he wins, it's better than Susie Collins. And I think he's a better candidate than Janet Mills, et cetera. And so I think there was a lot of looking the other way. But I was kind of
Mhm.
willing to just kind of go, look, if he's winning votes in Maine, and this is an electoral process, and he's, going to be good on policy, okay, that's not my decision to make. Fine. Maine is a weird state. Maine is a weird state, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you got clowns in the sewers, you got buried UFOs. I know
I
about
mean,
this.
the state that produced Stephen King is obviously going to be a very, very strange place. And then about 3 weeks ago at this point, the New York Times piece came out with, allegations about, kind of abuse towards women.
Yes, with
And
again more than enough to
yes.
disqualify him just by itself.
And then, like, even then, it's kind of like, well, the one person really kind of going out on there is this like long-term Republican operative who defended Brett Kavanaugh, and I think a lot of people were kind of like, well, and I think it is worthwhile to question that, you know. I think it is worthwhile to kind of like privately in my heart to kind of go, really? Really, that's the only person you can find? But it turns out that was not the only person they could find. But the New York Times could not responsibly report out the thing because this woman, Jenny Rassicot or Rassico, I've kind of heard it both ways. I don't know if it's kind of actually French or like Anglified French or whatever, but she was a named source in the original New York Times article. She did not come out with her real story because she believed in this politics. And I think it's astonishing that an actual like victim, a person who was personally victimized, who is, and I do not use this word lightly, based on the details of the allegation that were published in the Politico article, and all this will be in
Hmm.
the show notes. This is rape. This is classic,
Unquestionably. Yes.
unquestionable rape. That by these allegations, Plattner had coerced sex with this woman where she felt that she could not say no because he was intoxicated and forceful. And he claimed not to remember the next day. Um, that's one of those things as someone who has had a bit to
Oh, well,
drink a
that's
time
all
or
right
two.
then.
Um, I do not, he said he didn't, this is one of those things. This is not in the article. This is something that I believe is, he said he didn't remember because he knew exactly what the fuck he did.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. That's
Well,
me
he's told so many
editorializing at this point.
lies, provable
Yeah,
lies at
yeah,
this point.
no.
Yeah.
Um, and he is still not admitted to it. He says these things are
No, he
categorically untrue.
outright denies it in his
In
video
his
statement,
yeah, no, absolutely.
in his
I,
ridiculous video statement.
at this point, now there. I mean, we are in the statute of limitations for rape at this point.
Yes.
He could be criminally charged for this,
Hmm.
and um, so
I
it
think
may
it's
be it may be a like wise decision for him in a legal sense to not own up to it,
to
but
shut the fuck up. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Um, I would be very happy if Graham Platner just disappeared into the ether, and I never have to hear about him or say anything about him ever again. That would
Really?
be.
I'd like to see him go to prison for what he did.
I would like that to happen privately, in that I still don't have to ever think about it again. That would be fine with me. The details of that are so like just a classic rape scenario. It reads as so fucking true. I can't. I believe it 100%. And the fact that that's the thing that like puts him beyond the pale, right? That makes him unelectable. That now everyone is saying, well, okay, yeah, yeah, well, we finally the thing that no one can deny anymore.
Well, and we also have the right kind of victim at last, don't
Yeah,
we?
yeah. Well, we have a lefty Democrat who is accusing him of this, and so it's different. If all he did was physically assault a Republican operative, then and
We
I
can
think
just decide that that's a massive conspiracy,
right.
just
Well,
with no evidence whatsoever. We can just decide. But it's a bad look if it's a Democrat woman, a lefty woman, and she's white, obviously, and this is not to criticize her. I don't mean that at all.
no, no, not at
But
all, not at all.
this woman, these online leftist, supposed leftist influencers that have been defending him up to this point, despite everything we've known, suddenly they're changing their tune, and it's because this victim is someone that aesthetically, for their viewership and their market and their performance of their identity that they have, they can't do the, well, she's a liar, she's a conspirator stuff without making themselves look bad. So they're backed into a corner. So they got no choice but to decide that suddenly this new information means that we have to dump Plattner. Sorry, I'm really angry about this.
Oh no, no, I am,
I
I
hate
am,
these
I am,
people so
I
much.
am, I am very, very angry about it. I think you and I privately have been like kind of having this conversation and going like, oh my God, this fucking guy, the entire time. Again, I re-listened to that episode that we did at the beginning, and it's like, yeah, just he hasn't been vetted, like beyond, like we didn't know, I didn't know anything at the time. I'm just kind of like, yeah, this guy kind of sounds like a bit of a monster, and kind of like.
He strikes me as somebody who needs some help, and that's not to
Yeah,
express
no, no, no,
sympathy
no,
for an
absolutely.
actual violent rapist, but this
And
this he's all over the place psychologically. He's dangerous to people,
well,
and
and a person who has like seen what he presumably has seen in his life. I don't know. We were talking about doing an if Boots could kill, like maybe like thing, and one of the things that they did in the Body Keeps the Score episode is like, yeah, people who are victims of abuse often commit abuse in their later life,
yeah, yeah,
um, and that feels very like yeah, no, I joined the U.S. military. I think it's a very interesting thing about like the USA and like political class, and like nobody ever really seemed to ask him like, so what did you exactly do? I mean,
yes,
yeah, no,
yes,
nobody seems to have ever asked him a question of like, well, did you ever kill anybody? Did you ever,
yes.
were you ever in a
This is
firefight? Were
this
you
has
ever,
struck me as
this is,
well.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
has struck me. There's been a lot of investigation into his private life, rightly so, as it transpires. There's been much less investigation into exactly what it was that he himself personally did in Iraq and Afghanistan when he was out there representing the United States empire carrying a loaded weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost
Um,
like that's of less concern to people.
well, and like, I don't know, there's, God, this gets into so many complicated places. So I've kind of tend to, let me cook for a second, if you don't mind.
Hmm.
One of the things that a lot of podcasts of our ilk do that, and by which I mean other like kind of anti-fascist, like white nationalist like podcasts, is really lean on like former white nationalists, really lean into you got out of it. Let's help people to get out of it, right? And uh, Shannon Martinez is the only one of these people and she's been out of it for decades, and she is living a very nice life, and I consider her a friend, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And even and she very much she does this stuff like she goes and talks to groups all the time, or at least did. I'm a little bit disconnected from her these days, but um, but she'd been out of it for years and years. She has lived a life. She's raised multiple children, et cetera, et cetera, and even in our conversation it was like, yeah, if people don't want to listen to me, I understand. If people don't value my input, if people, then I want to make good regardless of whether you personally want to trust me. And that speaks volumes. Jeff Shoup, you know, uh, you know, former NSM member, probably, he gets sued in Charlottesville. He gets sued for at the right, and suddenly it's like, I'm going to be a podcaster, and I'm still a right winger, but I'm not a Nazi anymore. And it's like, no, no, you still kind of sound like you're a Nazi. And he got taken very seriously by a whole lot of people. Matt Heimbach literally turned on a dime and was like, no, no, no,
Hmm.
you leftists done fucked up because we have very serious concerns about like immigration and shit, and and traditional values, and we're just out there, and it's like, no, 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 you still believe everything you're doing, you're just pivoting, and because you're a Nazi and you don't want people to think you're a Nazi anymore.
Hmm.
Lauren Southern and another, God, we're gonna talk about Lauren Southern in a future episode. I promise. God, I've been
Yeah. Yeah. There was,
that woman. Anyway,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think a lot about like Graham Platner in those terms, right? Not that it's the same thing, right? But like I went off.
This is what I thought. This is
I've
exactly what,
yeah.
this is why I said, do we
And
know this guy wasn't an,
you and I have not discussed this before, like recorded this, by the way. The fact that we both were kind of thinking of the same, I mean, it makes sense. We both do this work, but still, like, so yeah,
that's
go
what he
ahead. Yeah.
reminds me of. He reminds me of a former, but one who hasn't been through the proper
Yeah.
process.
And in that episode we did about him, the whole thing I'm saying is like, do something else first. Like prove your bona fides. Go serve in a soup kitchen. Go do something. It could
Yeah,
be,
don't jump straight to senator.
exactly. And the more it's like, the more he was talking about, well, I have a dark past. I was in a dark place for a long time. And it's like, you were kind of in a dark place until like 2 years ago, buddy. Like that's not enough
Yeah.
time. Like, and I have known people in my personal life who served in these imperialist wars, who came home broken and wrote about it or talked about it, and like never put themselves into a place of, um, leadership. Never really. It was like, I'm broken by this. I want to talk about it. I want to share my experiences. I am becoming a better person, but this experience broke me down as a human being. I have traumatized others. I have been traumatized by this, and now I'm trying to work through it. And that's what if Graham Platner had done that for 10 years and it come out, and that's kind of where I was kind of landing on it, is like maybe he has learned, But yeah, no, the more details came out, the more it's like, no, 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 you really haven't. You've never really, I mean, you apologize for it because you think you have to do it for your Senate race, but
Yes.
there's never a sense of, like actually coming to terms with what you've actually been a part of. And what,
Exactly. When he talks about this, he talks about the effects upon him. He
yes.
talks about the things that he saw and how he felt. There's never any, and I understand that the American political system is very intolerant of people saying things like, "I shouldn't have joined the army. I shouldn't have gone to war. The war was wrong." But
Well, I mean, in the Vietnam era, we had, throwing their medals of honor, throwing them
yes,
away. That's
yes,
that's the level that we should be having with these wars,
yes,
and with the war in Iraq and
yes,
Afghanistan.
yes.
That's what we should be seeing. Like that, if you want to be taken seriously, if you want me to take you seriously, as I actually do not believe this shit, your entire focus should be what I did in Iraq and Afghanistan and how I'm trying to make it better for those people. That should be, your foremost concern, and not like, well, the soldiers are traumatized by it and therefore we shouldn't do this. It's just so self-centered and disgusting to
Mm,
me,
mm,
um,
yeah,
I mean,
yes.
my own father served in Vietnam. He joined the Air Force, so he didn't get drafted into the Army. That's the story I was told as a child. He's no longer with us, so I don't get to ask him these questions anymore. But that's the story I told him every time. He never wanted to talk about his military service. When it's like, I grew up in Alabama. Everybody knows this, but various times it's like, yeah, stand. We want our military veterans to stand up and be counted, and he would not. He was like, no, he was clearly ashamed of his experience and what he saw and what he did there. He fixed trucks when he was there in Vietnam for 10 months or whatever. But he was ashamed of that process. He hated it and never wanted to talk about it. Like a handful of times in my entire life, he came to me and like talked about like that experience, probably to keep me from doing it myself. Although I was never going to do that for other reasons, but and I could see that my father was broken by that. I could see, even as a child, I could see that like that this is a thing. And now as an adult, now as I'm 46 years old, I can see like exactly how traumatized he was by this, and how it shaped him. And I see that, and I see my father responded to this in a very human way. And he didn't have the resources that someone like Graham Platner has had in his life to
Mm,
respond to this. He didn't go back for multiple tours. He didn't go and work for a military subcontractor. He came home and got a day job and a wife and raised two children. Graham Platner does not speak to authenticity of like his actual feelings about this war. It's all, I don't know. Graham Platner gets so much credit for being forthright about I was in a dark place. That's all he ever says, right? I was in a dark place for so many years, and now I'm not, and I want to
oh
make
well,
things better for Mainers.
that's
So
that's
that's
all
this
right then.
all,
Whatever you did, you
yeah.
have the white man was in a dark place pass card.
Exactly. Well, he talks about that, never with any details, right? But he always kind of says those words. He gets credit, or he got credit in a lot of spaces, and I was in lefty spaces. He got credit in a lot of for a lot of people for being like, oh, you're not like a manufactured candidate. You're coming out there, you have this real life experience. But he doesn't talk about his life experience, right? He doesn't talk about like, well, I went to private schools. I mean, JD Vance was more honest in this. We did JD Vance's memoir. JD Vance is much more honest about this. I mean, he's a fucking liar top to bottom, but we never got like the real Graham Platner story. We never got like, well, I went into the military for this reason. I thought it would be exciting. I thought it would be it's all like this very like generic. It's not polished in the way that like Pete Buttigieg is just like he was planning to be try to run for president when he was 7 years old. It just like, he went to the school he did. He's clicking off on a resume. He's clicking off a checklist, to do that. Graham Plattner is not that guy, and yet his political campaign was very, polished to the point of like there's certain things we talk about and certain things we don't, and we like, and I get like I have a past. I really want to talk about the issues. Everybody, even people I respect, Mehdi Hassan, he asked him a couple of tough questions, but still never asked like, did you actually kill anybody in Iraq or Afghanistan?
Yeah,
I kind of wonder if like there are maybe some in order to get access to the candidate, there are certain questions you didn't get to ask. I kind
I
of
wonder.
suspect that might
Yes,
be part of the thing,
yes.
because it seems like Mehdi Hassan would have like asked that question.
I have to say in passing that of all the sort of online leftists or whatever that have covered this and very much not covered themselves in glory, the one that disappoints me the most is Mehdi Hassan and Zateo.
I hold Mehdi Hassan and Zateo to a higher standard, and so yes, I kind of understand that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
that's
okay,
it. I
yeah.
hold them to a higher standard, and they failed. They failed to meet it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, there are many people who really just shit the bed on this, and I am very happy to talk about the failure of the Mehdi Hassan conversation. I think the one that I think you and I have to talk about is the Majority Report, and in particular, Emma
Yes.
Vigeland is.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna pick on the woman because that's
Yeah.
we're just misogynist here. But
Well, I'm quite happy to pick on Kyle Kalinske if you'd
well,
like to do that.
well, let's do Kyle. I do not follow Kyle Kalinske. I find him. It's funny, like because I do the thing that I do, and I follow so many creators, but I just do not follow like these people, in like any real way. I'm just kind of like, yeah, Kyle Kalinske is annoying to me, but he's like he doesn't interact with my consciousness at all because I'm just like he's annoying. I don't like his content, and so I don't follow him, and so I don't like know what he's saying.
I don't want to be the one responsible for segueing us out of the earnest, heartfelt, serious side of the conversation into the let's complain about leftist YouTubers side of the conversation. But I suppose
Well,
I'm stuck with it.
I don't know. I don't
Um,
know. Like I don't know. Like do I need to say more in terms of the earnest like kind of conversation about this? I mean, is there more that you would like me to say, or is there more that you want to say? Because I'm very happy to kind of do that now and then like continue into like shitting on some
well,
lefty YouTubers.
the the thing is, the thing I was going to add to what you were saying is actually kind of a segue into the next part of the conversation, which is that
Sure.
I think the version of this story that Graham Platner was telling, the version of his story as a veteran and his, it it reads to me as having been almost curated to appeal to exactly these kinds of people.
Yeah.
He's presenting himself as you say, he's not really telling us about his what he did. We're not getting any details on what he actually did. He's not giving us anything particularly heartfelt. I don't think he's giving us a sort of a narrative performance, and it's tailored to appeal to because it's what is the story? It's the white poverty draft, which is fictional, at least in this case with
In this
him.
case, it is definitely fictional. I mean, it is a real thing, but it is fictional here. Yeah, absolutely.
Here, yeah. It's the well, I went there and I saw things and I went through things, and I'm not sneering at people that experience horrifying things in war, but this is the story he's telling. He's telling a sort of version of the Hollywood treatment of the war on
Yep.
terror, which is always about the white guy that goes out there and sees these terrible things and what he feels about it. And then the story as Platner tells it is that he comes back changed. And essentially it's a great big sort of, oh, you leftists who said at the time that the war on terror was wrong, you were right about everything. That's how it feels to me. It feels like it's pandering to exactly these sorts of people. The people who were, I mean, people like me, to be honest with you, people
Yeah.
who were young in the early 2000s, who were politicized to a certain extent. I mean, I was already politicized before that, but a lot of people were politicized by the war on terror, the invasion of Afghanistan, particularly the invasion of
Yeah.
Iraq. It feels tailored to me to appeal to those people on a sort of, well, I'm the guy, I'm the working class kid that you said shouldn't be sent out there to the desert to fight other people's wars for oil. You said it would have, and I came back and you were right. I think that's part of why they love this guy so much. He played
Yeah.
right into their vanity.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, I don't know, I don't have documentation of this, but I literally was like standing and watching 9/11 happen in a department store because I happened to be in a department store in a job interview that day, and I saw like a giant TV in a Sears. Man, this is dating me, right? I applied to work in a Sears that morning, and was going to meet my girlfriend at the time at the food court to get like Taco Bell or whatever, and like we passed by this giant. What was then a giant TV, a 50-inch, like not even a flat panel, just one of these box TVs, and like we're seeing, smoke billowing out of the Twin Towers. And
Yeah,
one of my immediate thoughts is like, well, they're going to kill a lot of brown people off of this, like
yeah,
because Bush was president, because that was what was going to happen. What I later realized is like, even if Gore was president, they probably would have killed a lot of brown people, but fewer brown people. It would have been, yeah, that's the topic for another time. But like,
that's
I
another
remember, I
subject.
remember, I
Yes,
was 21 years old, and I remember thinking it, and in that moment, this is a thing that is going to happen. I didn't put it in those terms in my brain at that point, but like the idea that this was a generational thing was very much in my mind in that moment, and that it was just going to be used as a proxy for that. And Graham Platner was younger than I, and like he came of age during, he was 15, 16 at that time. He voluntarily, we haven't had a draft in this country for since the Vietnam era, right? Um, I get people in poverty. There really are people for whom I needed to go to college. The only way I was going to get into college was the GI Bill, and the only way you do that is you go and you serve your 2 years or whatever. That's a calculation that people make. People can have their own feelings about that. I get that. If your only chance to ever like escape intergenerational poverty is go and fix trucks in Afghanistan for 2 years, look, do something good with it when you come back. Is kind of my angle on that. I am not directly criticizing you. I know there are people who do. That's not my place in this world. That's more that nuance, I don't suppose moral clarity on this, I guess. But Graham Platner is not that guy. Graham Platner had options. He thought it would be an adventure. He went out and like chose to go to Afghanistan because he thought it would be cool to do. He wanted that life
yes,
for himself. And he
yes.
didn't do 4 years. He did four consecutive. He did a lot of time and then went back working for a military subcontractor. Like it's baffling to me that anybody takes the idea that that he was not gung ho for this. Knowing everything about him, I think the only way, and the only thing that I ever said is like, well, again, he works in a motor pool. He worked in, he was doing little work. But then again, if you're a mercenary, you're not, you're carrying a rifle every day. That's what that job is. Like no doubt he engaged in firefights. And again, it feels so disgusting that this is the thing that it took, that we couldn't have headed all of this off at the pass and gone like, yeah, maybe let's ask some basic questions of him back in like October, back 10 months
Yes, would have
ago.
been nice.
It would have
Would
been
have been
nice if
nice.
maybe, I don't know. I saw some posts on like on Bluesky. It's like, yeah, the anti-fascists actually got this one right. Like I was even willing to forgive the Totenkopf. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's give him a pass on this one. It's not even that maybe it was the years of military service and working for Blackwater was the thing that was like, yeah, no, we really need to question this a lot more than we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Shall we? I think that's enough earnestness for this for this episode. I don't know. Maybe people love this, but I think we do have to shit on some left of center. I don't know. I don't want to call them leftist.
Oh,
Like
now you're talking my language.
yeah. So yeah, talk to me about Kyle Kalinske, and then we can get into the majority report, I guess.
Well, I feel like I owe an apology on this subject because I feel like I might have said a nice thing or two about Carl Kalinske on this show. I remember
Okay.
I saw him back in the day when it was mainly a sort of atheism, a bro atheism
Oh,
thing,
sure,
because I
sure.
think
Yeah, yeah.
he still goes by secular talk, and I
Right.
found it
Yeah, yeah.
insufferable. Just insufferable. And then fairly recently, I watched a couple of videos that he made. There was one in particular where he did a sort of roundup of the facts around Trump's relationship with Epstein and these other sleazy sort of teen modeling pageant dudes, and drew it all together in a way that I found quite impressive. So I feel like I said, yeah, I've been watching some Carl Kalinske. He's better than I remember, or something like that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, everybody, that I said that, because he fucking sucks. I think the Rebecca Watson video has an extended clip of him
Yeah.
um, reacting to the original news report. I think the New York Times news report, and just full on rape denial, basically, and abuse denial, spinning conspiracies about this Fifield woman. You know, you can't believe anything she says because this, that, and the other, calling her a lying bitch, and. You know, there's so much. Oh, well, this person is connected to AIPAC, and this person is connected to Israel, and this person's a Zionist. And it's like, yeah, this is just your get out clause for anything, isn't it? This is part of why you people are actually anti-Israel. It's not because you care about the Palestinians. It's because anything connected to Israel, anything connected to AIPAC, anything that you can, these are just magic words at this point that you can use to
Yeah.
make anything go away that you don't like. And it's so fucking cynical.
Well, I think the YouTube attention economy just absolutely destroys this. Is like, the way you get attention is by drawing engagement. People who love you, people who hate you. This is what I hate about live streamers. It's just like one of those
Mm,
like,
yeah.
or one
Yeah.
of the things I hate about live streamers. So, it's like, yeah, we're not doing this today, but like, let's in and out in like 60 to 90 minutes. Like, let's make a show. We're gonna prove clips. We're gonna do the thing. Sometimes we go over, but like the idea is like we're gonna structure this. I'm not gonna ask the audience for more time than they have to give me. These guys will sit and like rant for 8 hours, and I am
Just
so
drivel on. Yeah.
yeah. It's just filling time because that's how you make money from this algorithm. And that's a larger question, but I do not follow these people for that reason. I'm like, I've got Nazis to listen to. I don't have time to listen to your drivel. You know what I mean? Like, and the problem is that like a lot of the Nazis, God, Tim Pool, it's just God. I'm literally just ranting at this point. I was listening to like 2 hours of Tim Pool today, and I'm just like, God damn, this is so offensive to me just in terms of a time management question. It's not even your fascist tendencies. It's just you're wasting my time right now. It's like, anyway. Kyle Kalinske. I don't know. Like, bad people can
But
have good
he's just an
takes.
example. He's just an
Yeah.
example of a general phenomenon, I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah.
And it's very, I really used to like the Majority Report. I've been a sort of occasional watcher of the Majority Report for a good many years. There's been a lot of good stuff on that show, I think, over the years.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Lots of stuff I disagreed with as well, but they've really been deeply disappointing on this one. I mean, there's a bit in the Rebecca Watson video which we've already mentioned and which I'm sure we'll link to. It's the one to watch, and she shows this clip of Sam Cedar, who is somebody, again, as I say, I've long had a lot of respect for Sam Cedar, but he's sitting there and he's spinning this. I think it's from after the Totenkopf tattoo came out,
Yeah.
and he's spinning this sort of fanfic about what he imagines was going through Graham Platner's head. It's just, what are you doing? What the
Again,
fuck
again,
is
again, you've
this?
got 2 hours to fill in your slot, and this is how you choose to fill it. It's kind of like that's a lot of that kind of shit.
But yeah, it's mainly Emma Vigeland that has embarrassed herself over this one.
Yeah, I mean, they all have
They
like
all have.
they all have, but I think Emma Vigeland was like, "Well, I'm a woman, and and that's just kind of again, a couple of cis straightish guys should not go too hard on this, but she has been a very active voice in using her voice to defend Graham Platner and the most conspiratorial ways is like, this is all a smear job. And that's the thing that kind of lands me. It's like, I get being skeptical of the Fifield story, of kind of being like, well, the one people, the one person who's willing to come out is a Republican operative.
A Republican operative that Graham Platner chose to date for
Well,
several years.
that's the
Let's
other side of
remember
that.
that
Yeah, no,
one.
absolutely, absolutely. I think it is reasonable to kind of be skeptical and kind of go, well, is it though? But you got it wrong. You got it wrong for months. Look, I'm not going to forgive you for that. But the very first thing you have to do is come out and say, like, yeah, yeah, no, we fucked this shit up. I don't know. I get being skeptical. I
Yeah.
get being quietly skeptical. I get being kind of like, yeah, well, even if we take all this as true, like, yeah, well, why aren't there more people? And the reason there aren't more people is because I don't know. It's funny. Like I read it now, and I'm like the New York Times, the authors of the New York Times piece knew there was more that they could not publish, and produced what we know now is actually a very good article. We can't actually say certain things. We can't publish certain things, but we know that certain things happened almost certainly, and so we are doing this thing in this way. Um, Again, it should never have gotten to that point. It should never have gotten to the point of like, we have to look into Plattner's personal sexual life. We have to parse the details of exactly which women he was nasty with in what particular ways. It should have been done long before that. But it's also like, well, the newest accuser, she said, yeah, she came out because of people like Emma Vigeland. I think it might actually be personally Emma Vigeland and the things that she was saying about this is all just a smear job. This is all just a conspiracy. This is all just like the Israel lobby coming out, and the Democratic establishment coming out against this guy. I was like, no, no, no. He sexually assaulted me. I don't think she uses the word sexual assault. I don't think she uses the word rape. But again, the description is this is clearly a rape allegation. And
Yes.
that's the thing it took. That's what it took for, for everybody to go, well, now this is beyond the pale, like the brown people he probably murdered in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yeah, no, no, no. Well, that's just the cost of doing business. But, there's a 41-year-old white lady
Well,
who he sexually assaulted. And that's the thing we care about.
We've got a narrative that makes aesthetic sense to us and is flattering to us and works for us on what he did in the war on terror.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
we
Because
can spin that one.
we just, we forget. I mean, there is this like cultural thing of like, well, we just don't talk about that. We just don't talk about those things. I don't know. You and I, this episode has not been released at the time of this recording or at the time of the release of this, but you and I did a recent, kind of revisit of the conversation that we had with I Know Her Play Conversations. And, it is amazing to me as an American, how other countries do not respond to their military, to military adventurism the way that we do in the United States. It is very, well, the president just gets to bomb things. That's just a thing that presidents get to do. It's just par for the course. It's just a little course. The president is bombing someone. It's congratulations. It's Tuesday. What's for breakfast? That's just, I mean, that's literally just what happens. And so the effects of that are just not felt in our politics. It's just, we're just numb to it all the time. And but again, I expect better from Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi Hasan really should have asked those questions. And I would be fascinated to learn if like maybe there were just like certain things you just don't get to ask, and that's why it wasn't asked. But nobody was really talking about that except for the Cavernicle and Noah Samson. I think they had
I watched the Cavernacle video. That's a good video.
Yeah, Cavernacle and Noah Samson did a collab where they talked about this. I listened to it this morning.
I haven't seen that. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a really good conversation. Really, I was just trying to kind of get the sense of kind of what they were saying. I find those two guys, very given the constraints of YouTube, I find very forthright, very very morally honest. I'm down with it. It's sometimes difficult as an American. It's very difficult to listen to the Cavernacle sometimes. But in a good way. I don't know. This is kind of like making me expose more about myself in terms of like it really feels like this thing and like like we were right but also like I kind of got some things wrong in kind of thinking about this, and it's definitely something I'm going to be taking with me going forward. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm being very earnest right now. I'm being very honest. This is me expressing my feelings about it. I am disgusted by the process by which all this happened.
Yes.
It speaks a lot for the online left by like, the left, meaning like, YouTube producers like the Majority Report and Kyle Kalinske and Chink Uygur and like all these fucking people.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean, at this point, are the Young Turks even classifiable as being on the left? So, I
oh
mean,
God. Well, he did a Surrounded
that's an
episode.
arguable point.
Yeah, I mean, and Mehdi Hassan, who again I very much like in other contexts. I really have very few criticisms of Mehdi Hassan, but this is definitely one like, and he did better at like asking Graham Platner real questions than almost, but he didn't do follow-ups. That's the thing. It's just like he asked the question and then never really dug down into it, which I think
It's a
is
question
interesting.
of
Yeah.
scale with Zateo. They did better than other people, but they didn't live up to their own higher standards. That's the way I would put it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. When the Majority Report is sitting right there, being a big glowing red asshole, I find it hard to really criticize Teo. So, Sam Cedar, Emma Vigeland, Graham Platner. Again, if the Democrats lose the Senate or do not gain the Senate in November, Graham Platner is number one person. If Susan Collins retains her seat, et cetera. Given all these caveats, we don't know exactly what the electoral thing is going to look like in a few months. But if it comes down to this seat's flipping and Collins regains her seat, Graham Platner is the number one person who is responsible because he knew all this shit was in his past. He could have said, find somebody else. He could have supported financially someone else at the time, which you and I talked about, which Rebecca Watson talked about at the time. There were voices saying, this guy is poison. Let's not go with this guy for all these kinds of reasons. And the more time has gone by, the more we have determined, more reasons. Every day just gave us more reasons to go, this should not be the guy. And I think,
Yes.
because electoralism just means, well, this is our horse. We just got to put all our eggs in that basket. I think people who
Yes.
focus on electoralism, I think that's kind of the fundamental thing about the Majority Report. Really, it's like, I mean, Sam
Yes.
Cedar. I can look at any individual video, particularly Sam Cedar. I don't know. Emma Vigeland, I think, just goes off into conspiracy land like much quicker.
Yes.
Sam Cedar
Yeah.
is very like, I get where he's coming from. He is incredibly knowledgeable about the ins and outs of policy, about the ins and outs of like how politics works on the day-to-day level in terms of the way that these things work. I find him useful to listen to for that reason. Um,
Yes.
but electoralism, and Sam Cedar has been very open about this the entire time, is like ultimately the question is, can he win? Will he win? Can we flip the Senate? In his terms, it is we. He used that as a we. I do not use that terminology for myself because I do not engage in electoral politics in that way. Can we flip the Senate? I think is a for Sam Cedar, that is his calculation. It really comes down to the voters in Maine. Do the voters in Maine support him? And if they will, and if that means better things will happen if he wins than he doesn't, I get that calculation. He is a very good analyst, and I think he has been very honest about that as that's his angle at it. It's not like, well, these things are problematic. I think he definitely did downplay a lot of the difficulties because he supported Graham Platner in this role. But the further you get into it, the more it's like, look, it's a binary choice. And so, like, look, if Graham Platner was running and I'm a Maine citizen voting in this election, and it's Graham Platner versus Susan Collins on November 3rd or whatever the date is in 2026, I'm not sure I wouldn't vote for Graham Platner, even knowing everything that I said, just because the flip of the Senate could mean that much for people in the United States and for the world. And that's the
Yeah.
problem
This is
with
a sort of moral
electoralism.
calculus
That's
that
the moral
the
calculus.
system forces on people. Yeah. Yeah.
I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and I told myself I would never vote for a person who supported the war in Iraq as she did when she was a senator. I voted for Kamala Harris, and I told myself I would never vote for a person who said those kinds of horrible things about trans people. Uh, you know, I'm an American. I vote for terrible people all the time. I am very sorry. It's ultimately it is not a moral calculation. It is a least harm calculation in a lot of ways. Um, Again, I don't live in Maine, so I get to make that decision. But like, I get that. But then I didn't like sitting there and push Graham Platner. And this is a
And
fundamental thing with the electoralism, like electoralism uber alles. The electoralism is all we care about. sort of problem.
Given everything you've just said, I totally understand the appeal of the siren song of the leftist candidate,
Yeah,
because you think, well, this is how the system is set up with all these compromises and compromises of one's conscience built into it. We can't just sweep it away now. It is what it is. It's the existing system. It's the only mechanism that we have for changing anything. So the way to change it is to get inside it with people who actually have leftist principles, and they find people who are prepared to say things like Medicare for all, and all the shibboleths of this sort of
yeah,
progressive left identity, Medicare for all, and end the Israel lobby, and
yeah.
Gaza is a
Uh,
genocide and stuff like that.
I mean, genocide in Gaza that by itself will sell you for a whole lot of people. Like, I get it.
Yes, yes, and
So few people are even
that's
willing to go that far,
yeah.
and yeah, that's enough.
There were other candidates. There were people other than Graham Platner who had, I think, actually better policy platforms. Graham Platner's supposedly this great sort of anti-war figure. His platform's full of stuff like, well, I want to keep us out of needless wars, or whatever the wording was, and meanwhile let's close the shipbuilding gap with China, and restore recruitment. And it's like, oh, I see. But I get it in principle. You get this guy, and you think he's got you look at him, and because of your preconceptions about voters, and who the working class is and who they identify with, this guy looks good to you as a prospect that's going to play well with those people. Ironically, it looks like what are called working class voters in the way these things, psephology they call it, don't they? Uh, didn't actually click with Platner in Maine. But you, the leftist that's trying to use electoral politics to get in the system and change it, it looks good to you, and he's got all the right catchphrases for your politics. But the thing is, you're still playing in that world. You're still playing in that world of party politics, establishment party politics. And these people, it infuriates me the way they talk about, oh, establishment Dems this and establishment Dems that. Like, you're running as a Democrat for the
Yeah.
Senate. You're trying to get into the establishment. You can't just declare that one bit of what is clearly the establishment, i.e., you, somehow magically isn't the establishment. You can't just declare yourself not part of the political establishment if you want to be the Democratic senator from Maine, okay? And if you're going to do that, okay. But if you're going to do that, you've got to do it properly, which means you've got to do all the stuff that you attack so-called establishment Dems for doing, like vetting candidates to see if they're rapists.
I just imagine how far Graham Platner would have gotten in like a UWW or IWW like a union hall. I imagine how far he would have gotten in a food dot bombs. Like okay,
Instant he
going
walks in, they spot him for what he is.
go and scrub dishes for the next 2 years, and then maybe we'll let you
Yeah.
talk. That's kind of like, and that's look, if he had done that, that would have been the vetting process. It's like can you do something that like does not center you in this process? Can you do something
Mm.
that is actually useful, that is not like you gain power and influence in this world? That's kind of the answer for me. He would have gotten nowhere in any of these things, and even like a DSA. I mean, I think yeah, God, I'll put this. I listened to this just before we got on this call today, but Emma Vigeland went on the Slate podcast, and like Emma Vigeland is like, well, she still is standing for. Well, he said all the right things, and he did all, and what I
No, he
find,
didn't. He
well,
did not say all the right things.
sorry,
Anyway,
I'm paraphrasing a bit,
yeah,
but
I know, I know. I'm
I
I'm
like
arguing with her, not you.
I liked the things that he supported. I liked his policies. We were voting for the policies and not the person, right? But we never got like, Graham Plattner, God willing, I don't believe in God, but God willing, will never be in a position of power until we get to find this out. But he hasn't done anything to prove that to you. All you have is his kind of personal history, and the things that he's actually done is like, again, I've said I would never like put myself up for office in an electoral sense, because like I would not like people looking into my personal life in that way. But if I did so, I'd say, well, I've learned how to speak German for 7 years, and
Yeah.
that tells you a lot about what I do when I'm not getting like a whole lot of recognition for this when I'm spending hours and hours of my life like studying this stuff and trying to fight against this. This would speak for me. I would put this podcast down and go, yeah, there are certain episodes I'm not particularly proud of, mostly because some of the guests were not great, but and some things that I just got wrong or whatever. I mean, look, I'm happy to discuss. I'd be happy to discuss anything about that we put on this podcast in terms of like my history and go like, yeah, this is the thing that I said. These are people I invited on that did not turn out to be in the best in the long term. But Graham Platner doesn't even have that. He had
You
nothing.
mean people that APAC planted on the podcast? Surely
Yes, yes,
that's
exactly. But Emma Vigeland on the Sleep podcast, she's asked the tough questions of like, well, yeah, but you were kind of the person who, more than anyone else, was defending Graham Platner. She's like, well, I feel disgusted by that. Now I feel disgusted by that. Now I feel disgusted by that.
Hmm.
Now that it turns out, well, he can't win because like this is actually a thing that's too far for everyone. And
Now that a victim has turned up who in my milieu can't just be dismissed as a
yes,
liar.
exactly.
So I have to admit that there's a problem. Now that that's happened, yeah,
Yeah.
great.
I don't know. It's funny that like I fucking hate everything she said about Graham Plattner, and yet she still has like commentary that is interesting. And she's like, well, if he wasn't a DSA candidate, and if he was a DSA candidate, he would have gone through some vetting in the early days. They vet their candidates. He didn't go through
Yeah.
that process. It's like, yeah, what we were saying at the time months ago. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, obviously, Emma Vigeland is not like listening to I don't speak German, but like, yeah, what actual anti-fascists are not invited into these conversations is kind of the issue, right? Even
Yeah.
much more prominent anti-fascists than us are not like invited into this for I think fascinating reasons. It's like, yeah, no, yeah, you guys are shit too. Is kind of the answer. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. This is all terrible. We gotta break this system down, or there's no winning. Yeah, no, it's a yeah,
Anti-fascists talking to progressive leftists are liable to say things like, yeah, but you agree with 40% of what these people say,
yeah,
50, 60% of what these people say correctly.
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah. I don't get invited to those podcasts. So,
I hope people know us well enough to know that
yeah. I mean, this
the
is this is
laughing
just
doesn't
yeah.
mean that we think any of this is funny. This is a horrible story.
No, absolutely. I
There are
mean,
bits
look,
of that. There are bits of that Politico report that I read. Where they relay Rassicot's or Rassico's account, and it's horrifying and heartbreaking.
I wanted to
You
throw
know,
up. I wanted to throw up reading it because
yeah,
I have known people who've
yeah.
gone through that.
The bit where she says, I didn't come forward because I share so much of his politics. And, I'm not quoting, but she says something like, I didn't want to come forward because it would damage his campaign and I agree with his politics and I didn't want to be responsible for that. It's just so horrifying and
because
heartbreaking that
because
woman had been put into that position.
that woman she has suffered from that man. She believes in the things that he at least claims to believe in, and I'm willing to grant that he believes in them for now until we find out he's actually a secret fascist or whatever. But she supported the idea, she supported the thing, she wanted Susan Collins not to win, and the fact that the New York Times did not go with a full story, did not the fact that it did not seek his campaign, and the fact that she was being, she saw Liefeld, the Republican operative, being smeared in the media. And
Mm,
despite their political differences, it's like, well, no woman who's been a victim of this guy should have to go through that. And then she comes forward, and
yes.
it's victimization all the way down. It
Yes.
really, really is. And
And what this whole thing reveals is so fucking depressing and infuriating, which is that this version of the left just fundamentally does not care about these issues. It doesn't care about the white supremacist imperialism, the dead bodies that come from that. And
yeah,
it doesn't care about women. It doesn't care about sexual assault. It doesn't care about these things. Or at least, if it cares about them, it cares about them to the extent that it can afford to. They're secondary to the other consideration, which is the other considerations, which is, I mean, I think the primary consideration for a lot of these people is just clicks and views. And then it's winning. And everything else,
yeah,
this woman was raped, this person in Iraq was killed by this uniformed mercenary with a, well, that's, yeah, we can, if it doesn't affect us, our winning or our bottom line or the way we look in the ecosystem of kudos and clout, on in leftists online circles, we can care about it to that extent. But otherwise, nah, not if it damages our team. And it's just so, it's so depressingly similar to exactly the stuff that they criticize the so-called establishment politicians for doing.
Because ultimately, I mean, again, I'm just going to come back to electoral politics. It's like we got to get beyond electoralism. That's just the nature of the beast here, Electoralism is binary, win or lose. And so you get at a certain point, you just got to put all your weight behind it and you're not going to question it. But the time to question it, again, I'm just going to come back to this. The time to question it was when he was first introduced. When you and I produced that podcast episode, and we're like, yeah, there are some questions here. Shouldn't we? Does it have to be this guy? I re-listened to that and I was like, man, I was really harsh towards Graham Platner. I don't remember being that harsh towards him, but the whole thing I was asking is, yeah, this guy, he seems fishy to me. Let's ask some questions. Let's explore this. Maybe this guy doesn't have to be the guy. There was time at that point to do something different. And there's a whole process. FD Signifier. I'll put a link to this. I'll give you the link to this. He did a thing before all this happened about Graham Platner. It's like Graham Platner fucking looks like Walter White. This is your standard, male villain in a TV show. This is who this guy is. I quite like FD Signifier, and he often brings me to places because he talks about like inter-black culture kind of political debates and cultural debates, which is not a place where I often get to be, but I get to kind of understand it, and I admire it from afar without commentating on it because I don't understand it, and so I'm learning about it from FT Signifier. He had a very he's like, I don't look in this guy because he's a white guy. He's like he says nice things, but he fucking worked for Blackwater. Like, fuck this guy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
He's
got an SS tattoo.
Yes.
How many times do we need to say this?
But it is like because he's white, because he codes working class.
Or at least
working
people's
class
idea
is
of working class. Yeah,
there's the Marxist representation versus the standard. Anyway,
no, I'm very specifically talking about a particular type of leftist, who's profoundly bougie, who talks a lot about the working class and thinks that it means people in plaid shirts with beards that
no, absolutely
talk a certain way.
I don't know. We've talked a lot about me personally. I mean, I had a job, but I worked at office supply store selling printers when I was 19 years old. I was bagging groceries at 17. Whatever you feel about, like, I went into the military and then I worked for Blackwater, and then I own an oyster farm. I'm an oyster man or whatever. I find no indication that Graham Platner has ever had a job. Like
exactly.
has ever like, I clock in and clock out every day, and I produce widgets or something. Like,
but he meets this. This is my point, though. He meets the aesthetics of a stereotype that means working class to certain types of leftists.
Exactly. And because I haven't been to grad school, but I speak about things on a grad school level, I speak, I've read leftist theory, or at least listen to podcasts about people talking about leftist theory. I do anti-fascist work. I respect trans people, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, but there are people who say, well, you're not working class. It's like, dude, I have cleaned toilets for a living. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know. Sorry,
the working class. So the minute you know anything, the minute you've got any sort of political education, you can't be working class if you.
Sorry, I'm yelling at Jesse Single in my head right now. So that's just like
aren't we all?
That'll be a bonus. That's the like $20 a month tier is I get to yell about Jesse Single. So all right. This has been. I'm gonna sum up here. Graham Platner. I think, again, if Susan Collins wins and she is the decisive, like, where they get to flip the Senate. Sorry, I use that language because they do it. But anyway, Graham Platner is primarily responsible for this because he knew his history before this. And fuck that guy. Fuck it. Fuck you. Fuck you for even pretending you do this. support for his victims, even his victims who have defended Brett Kavanaugh. Actually, I think, the things that Graham Platner is accused of, much worse than the things that Brett Kavanaugh is accused of.
And these left. I know we're trying to wrap up, and I'm going back on
Yeah.
the attack. But
No,
these
no, you're
leftists that
good.
are doing this, oh well, Fifield defended or worked for or whatever the fuck it was, Brett Kavanaugh. And why is that bad? What is it that Brett Kavanaugh did? Brett Kavanaugh did the stuff that your guy did worse, and the people that defended Brett Kavanaugh did what you are currently doing now. Engaging in rank rape culture and patriarchy, making women afraid to come out and talk about the fact that they've been attacked by calling them liars and saying they deserved it when they get attacked. That's what you're doing now
Yeah,
to her.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is I feel dirty. I feel dirty even like, that we had to talk about this. And but yeah, I blame Graham Plattner, first of all, for all of this. He had the choice to not subject us to this. The fact that his personal life is being dissected right now, this is what happens when you run for a high office like this.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
the people that
And Trump can
picked
get
him,
away with it. You can't. Yeah.
well, Trump can get away with it because he's been in the public eye for 40 years and like nobody cares because he's just it's Trump. What are you gonna do? It's kind of how they land on that. Because his supporters are fascists, they don't care. We do. That's the thing.
Ostensibly. Yeah.
Well, well, we do. Whether
We do. Yeah. This is
God,
why you have to be so careful with the word we. It's the
yeah,
most
exactly,
abused word in
exactly.
politics.
I am so disgusted by this. I am so disgusted by
Yeah.
this whole process
This is
because,
yes.
again, and I do not want to say I was specifically and personally arguing in a good. I saw this guy immediately and was like, can we ask some more questions? That was kind of what that episode was. Is can we look at this guy a little bit further before we put all our like faith in him? Was kind of my opinion of
Hmm.
Graham Platter, and
He might
apparently,
have another Nazi tattoo. We don't know.
apparently, yeah.
There might be one on his ass.
God, it's so I feel dirty talking about this. I feel dirty having to do this. And the reason that all of us have to sit here and put this in our brains and know about this guy's personal life, which Retzko did not want this to become public. She went to the last minute because it was not being said in public. The reason is because the people who have huge audiences who get the majority part gets 2 million has 2 million subscribers, something like that. They regularly
Hmm.
get several hundred thousand listeners or viewers on a single episode. They were all in support of this guy because nobody did their due diligence on this. It's disgusting, and it is this one thing that like yeah we could have nipped this in the bud. We as like online leftist conversation to the degree that Sam Cedar and I are doing the same job. That's a we, right? I think you and I did our due diligence. We were doing other things at the time. I think you and I pointed out the things that we were capable of doing at that time and at our level and not like covering this professionally in the same way that Sam Cedar does. This is the thing I want people to come away with is when you see these guys, ask questions at the beginning and don't put all your eggs in one basket because now
Hmm.
the basket is going to go set on fire and we're going to get more fascism. That's where we are now. That's the end of it. And
Yes.
it's not that I was right and you were wrong. It's like we need to think about this moving forward. I don't care about Graham Platter at this point. I mean, I care about him to the degree that I want him to suffer, but I'm done thinking about Graham Platter. The world is not dying. I mean, the world is dying, but it's not dying immediately. If electoralism has a future, which I think by definition it does, and we care about candidates and all this sort of thing, down the line, we have to, and this is a we, I'm using this we have to think about this more holistically. And actually, just because he's a white guy with a gruff voice who says the nice things that you like to hear, maybe also question if he fucking worked at Abu Ghraib and has a Nazi tattoo. That's all
Hmm.
it takes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. And maybe learn that the working class is not a set of aesthetic signifiers. It's
Yeah,
actual people, and they're people of all sorts of colors and genders and sexes
absolutely,
and
absolutely, absolutely.
sexualities, and
Uh,
and they have very decided opinions that are often extremely different to the professional online left or professional online progressives.
yeah. Absolutely.
So, it's certainly if you're going to talk about, oh, we need a working class party and we need a working class campaign and we need working class policies, maybe find out what actual working class policies would actually be before you talk about that. Maybe? I don't know. Might
Yeah,
be a thought.
absolutely.
Um, okay. Well, that was thoroughly depressing.
Yeah.
But it is IDSG after all, so what the
Yeah.
fuck do you
This
expect?
always gets worse. Even when we don't have clips, it just always gets worse.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel I have purged a little bit, like I feel like,
yeah,
you know,
I feel
uh,
better.
I've been very angry about this for a while.
Mm,
And
mm.
this is kind of the moment of like, I was willing again, not to get back into it. I was willing to like give him a pass when he was winning and when we didn't know some of these details. And it's like, you're going to be the 51st vote, be the 51st vote. Fine. I don't have to think about you anymore. The fact that now we know all this and
Oh,
he's this terrible. And again, he knew about this. He knew about it. He knew. He knew. And every time he ever said, yeah, there will be no more allegations coming forward. It's like he was fucking lying. He's been lying the whole time.
yeah, yeah. The hubris of this guy
Yeah, no,
is
absolutely.
off the charts. But again, not to restart, but there's plenty of that to go around. I mean, these people, again, they complain endlessly about, corporate Democrats, establishment Democrats, and I don't disagree. I'm not defending the Democratic Party,
I
but
mean, I don't know. Like
they,
it's worth so just for 2 minutes. It's worth saying
yeah,
the worst things that we know about Graham Platner. Everything that we know is true is true. Bill Clinton, what we know about Bill Clinton is worse. Donald Trump is worse. Joe Biden, worse. There is a sense in which, well, because Graham Platner is coded working class, because he comes from outside the establishment, and I'm putting, sorry, Jack can see this, but nobody else can. I'm putting air quotes around all this. Um, you
silent
know,
hand signals don't work
so
terribly well in an
yeah, not
audio
not in the
medium.
podcast form. Hopefully, I am emphasizing these words in a way that the audience will understand. Yeah, Graham Plattner is being subjected to to more scrutiny because he espouses these kind of like left of center politics that
Well,
we
after
agree
he was
with.
subjected to less scrutiny,
Yeah. The thing is, we want the guy. We, and again, I use the word we advisedly. We on the left have to, if we're going to take these candidates and use and take them seriously, we have to subject them to these things because the mainstream media will not until it is too late for us, again, the
mm,
we, to do anything about it. And that's where I land on it. So
yes, it's just the hypocrisy is off the charts.
I
These are
guarantee,
the same people. These are the same people that complain. Well, why didn't Joe Biden drop out sooner? Why didn't they have a vote on who was going to be the new candidate? That's why we lost in 2024. It's like you're doing the same thing again. Why you're doing the same thing from your supposedly left-wing progressive or socialist or whatever you want to call it angle. Why didn't your guy drop out sooner? Why is he still apparently trying to get in the way the way of the process of the Maine Democrats finding a new candidate? But at the time of recording, but it goes right the way down the line. They complain about, oh, vote blue no matter who. That's the situation that you people tried to engineer with your guy.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, that was a news roundup episode, and I think we rounded up that news. I think it's been well and truly rounded up. I'm looking at the enclosure where we keep the news, and there it is, and it's all there, and it's behind the necessary sort of wooden framework thing that they put around the thing in the movies, where the cattle go. Tune into the next episode; it'll be a long. Bye bye.
Bye. Cut this if you like. I've been interviewed by the New York Times like several times at this point.
Oh well,
Um,
that's enough to compromise you. Obviously,
yeah, no.
we can never believe another thing you say.
By reporters in the New York Times, and every time it was kind of like not every time, but there was an article about Cantwell, and when he was in the news, and I'm known as the Cantwell guy. Oh God,
You're
there's
the
Cantwell news, by the way. We're not doing that right now. We're waiting until he produces more news, but there is Cantwell news. Just wet the whistle. There's the thing. He's doing batshit things that are not fascist. And so anyway, when I was interviewed and I was like, yeah, he stopped subscribing to Pornhub because he was convinced that the Jews were making him feel bad about the size of his dick. And he said that on a podcast once, and the reporter was like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I can get you the audio." And I spent like 4 hours like squirming through and finding the audio and sending it to him, and he couldn't get it past the editorial board. I'm like, "Oh my God, that's the one detail I wanted you to put in." It was a good article, and he spent me he treated me respectfully, but it was like one of those. So I have been through the New York Times vetting process, and the editorial thing is like, yeah, we actually can't talk about a fascist stick in the New York Times.